Nobody goes to war with bows and arrows anymore, for the simple reason that bows and arrows cannot help to secure a decisive victory in our modern day and time. In the days of the machine gun, the handgun, the sniper, the AK-47, and all forms of ammunition that countries and nations of the earth use in prosecuting warfare. Once upon a time, the airplane was designed to carry human beings from one location to the other by the Wright brothers in very early 20th century. But by the time the First World War was being fought between 1914 and 1918, the airplane that was supposed to carry human beings from one location to the other became fitted with machine guns so that it could take out a larger number of people within the shortest space of time from the area, from above, using the area attack mode. Things didn't get any better, such that by the time the Second World War was being fought between 1939 to 1945, the airplane had undergone serious metamorphosis as to be able to further destroy larger numbers of people, properties, and all forms of infrastructural development within the shortest space of time. You'll remember that the dropping of 2 atomic bombs in Japan by the United States of America, one in Hiroshima and the other in Nagasaki, led to the death of hundreds of thousands of people. And even after that war had come to an end, nations of the earth have embarked on a serious arms race to stock up their piles of ammunition because of the threat that several cities and sites pose to their very existence. Now, what has modern warfare got to do with literature? There's only one way to find out. I'd like you to stay with me as I go on this short break. Okay, so you're welcome back. Literature and warfare. Well, the nexus, the correlation, the relationship between literature and warfare is just very simple. And that's the fact that literature actually is warfare. Yes, you heard me right. Literature is warfare. If you are a student of literature, you are watching this video, you are a lover of literature, and you might be sitting for an examination in the days to come, it is expedient that you know that you are actually involved in this intellectual warfare. And it behoves on you to arm yourself with enough ammunition, with enough information, with enough resources to help you to analyze, dissect, and correctly carry out a proper dissecting of works of literature, poetry, prose, and drama. It is to this purpose, it is to this end that every student needs to arm him or herself with literary devices. And the more literary devices that you have at your disposal, the better for you. If you have enough of this at your disposal, chances are that by the time you come across several works that you need to analyze and give your personal subjective opinions to, you'll be able to do that very, very correctly. So when you have to come to analyze works of literature, poetry, prose, and or drama, you will do so with ease because you have been well fortified with what we know as literary devices. So today's video will be dedicated to looking at literary devices, some of the more common literary devices that you have in works of literature. I'll try as much as possible to do another video, okay, so that we can cover more literary devices, and I'll leave you to go and read up the rest on your own. No single video, 2, 3, 4, even 10 videos might not be sufficient enough to accurately cater to looking at all of these literary devices. So let's take on a few literary devices in this video, and then in the next video I'll look at some more literary devices that you find exhibited in works of literature. So without much ado, let's get started. The very first set of literary devices I'll be looking at concern themselves with sounds. Okay, the very first set. So that includes alliteration, assonance, consonance, and the onomatopoeia. I'll take them in no particular order so that you can get to understand this. Now, if you're going to understand alliteration, assonance, and consonance, these 3 essential ones, then you must have a working knowledge of the sounds in English language, because these 3 literary devices concern themselves with sounds. So if you are a student of literature writing the WASSCE, it is expected that you would have been taught and exposed to the sounds of English. You have 24 consonant sounds in English, and then you have 25 vowel sounds in English. You are expected to have known these sounds by now. I'm sure your teachers in school, your teachers of English in school might have exposed you to some of these sounds. Because if you do not understand these sounds, then chances are that you might not really fully appreciate and understand what I'll be talking about. But you can still listen in and then pick one or two things before you head back to your classroom again. Okay? So let's talk about consonants. With consonants, there is a consistent repetition of a particular consonant sound. Consonants deals with the repetition of a particular consonant sound within a stretch of words. Now, this repetition can come at the beginning of a word, at the middle of a word, or at the end of a word. But once you have a stretch of word, you will find out that that particular consonant sound is constantly being repeated within a stretch of words. That is the consonants. So for example, you look at even a word as short as tongue twister. You find out that a particular sound is repeated more than once, as expressed by the letter T. It is repeated more than once. You find it at the initial position. You find it also at the middle position. Tongue twister. You also have another example. Now this is a very popular example that you have amongst the nursery rhymes. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. You find out that you have more than one consonant sound repeated in that stretch of words. In the whole stretch, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Okay, a peck of pickled peppers. It's actually tongue twisting, so you can come up with that. For consonants to have been established, the consonant sound must be repeated more than once. It doesn't matter where it is repeated. You could have the first sound at the initial position of the first word. You could have the second repetition at the middle of the next word. You could have the next sound at the end of the third word, and so on and so forth. So once you have that interpret, that medley in no particular location precisely, either middle, beginning or ending or final positions, what you have on ground is actually the consonants. The consonant is very, very similar with another literary device known as the alliteration. The alliteration may be described as the repetition of the same consonant sound at the initial position of a word. So whenever a word has a particular consonant sound that is repeated in a stretch of word at the initial position, that is alliteration. So the difference between consonants and alliteration is very simple. While consonants actually has a sound repeated either at the initial, middle, and final positions, the alliteration has the sound repeated only at the initial position. Please take note of that. Alliteration has the sound at the initial position with a stretch of words. With consonants, you have the sound at the initial, at the middle, and the final position within a stretch of words. I give a very good example of an alliteration I came up with myself. Father Francis fried 5 fresh fishes for 5 friendly father figures from France. You will find out that in that stretch of words, there is a particular sound that is repeated consistently at the initial position. So some other examples of alliteration are found in cartoon characters, TV programs here and there. Some include Mickey Mouse, Daffy Duck, Wally West, Peter Parker, Lois Lane, and so on and so forth. You have them there, the initial position of the same consonant sound. Okay, let's go on to assonance. With assonance, you have a particular vowel sound that is repeated more than once. When a vowel sound is repeated more than once within a stretch of words, that is an example of assonance. So when I say something like, the elephants enjoy eggs every day. The elephants enjoy eggs every day. You find a particular sound that is constantly repeated within that stretch of words. That is an example of the assonance. Another example would be like maybe a statement like, the company has decided to serve meals on wheels. Meals on wheels. So you have that particular sound, another sound also represented more than once. When a vowel sound is represented more than once within a stretch of words, what you have there is an example of the assonance. So let's go on to looking at device number 4. That's the onomatopoeia. Now, the onomatopoeia may be described as a literary device that attempts to simulate sounds with the aid of words. So when sounds are expressed using words, what you have there is the onomatopoeia. When someone hits the door very hard on his way out, on the way out, someone hits the door very hard, you see the person slammed the door, the person banged the door. So the word slam or bang is an example of the onomatopoeia. Another good example would be the buzz of bees, gushing waters, the barking of dogs, the mewing of cats, animal sounds, the jingling of bells, the screeching of car tires. All of these examples are examples that attempt to simulate the sound using words. The metaphor may be described as a direct comparison between two unrelated objects. So when you compare two items that are not related at all, you have metaphor. Another way of looking at metaphor is when you refer to one object in the light of another. It is also an example in metaphor. So metaphor is a direct comparison between two unrelated objects. I give a very good example. In Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, the Duke refers to Olivia as heaven. In one of his statements, he says, "Here comes the countess. Now heaven walks on earth." The statement, "Heaven walks on earth," is a direct reference to the countess, whom the Duke adores at that point in time. So he compares her with the beauty, the glory, the splendor, and the grandeur of heaven. Heaven walks on earth. Let me give another example. In Oswald Michal's Nightfall in Soweto, it's a very few opening lines which thus: "Nightfall comes like a dreaded disease, seeping through the pores of a healthy body and ravaging it beyond repair." Let me stop there. When you take a closer look at that poem, you'll discover that the poet is not talking about nightfall as a time of day. Nightfall actually at that point in time is a metaphor for the terrible regime of apartheid in South Africa. If you want to understand what the poem talks about in details, you might need to read Nightfall in Soweto. So those are examples of metaphor. When something is referred to in the light of another, is an example of metaphor. And then when two things that are not related are compared, okay, that is also an example of metaphor. Then let's look at the simile. The simile is closely related to the metaphor. As a matter of fact, the simile, the metaphor, and personification are known as transferred epithet. Now, the simile may be described as that literary device where two unrelated things are compared with the aid of like and as. When you use like or when you use as, either of both of them would suffice enough to qualify that expression as a simile. So you could simply say he's as tall as a palm tree, she's as short as a goat. You are making two comparisons there. You are comparing one with the other. They don't look alike, but they share something in common, and that union is aided by the use of like and as. So metaphor does not use like and as. It also compares two things, but it calls one thing in the name of the other. But simile compares two things and it uses either like or as. Let's go back to that poem, the poem by Oswald Michali. It says, "Nightfall comes like a dreaded disease." So you have nightfall on the one hand, and then you have a dreaded disease on the other hand. Nightfall presents or projects the appearance of a disease. So when you imagine how dreadful a disease may be, then you can begin to understand why the literary artist talks about nightfall in that light. Another example would be Leper said that St. God's, "I will pronounce your name." The few opening lines of that poem says, "I will pronounce your name, Naet. I will declaim you, Naet. Naet, your name is mild like cinnamon." So let's stop there. It's a very beautiful, fantastic love poem. You might want to read it once you're done with this video. Now, he compares the name Naet with cinnamon as mild. Your name is mild like cinnamon. So you find that comparison also in that poem. When you pick up poems, pick up works of fiction, you pick up works of dramas, and even listen to people's utterances every now and again, you will find out that the simile is one of the most extensively used literary devices in daily conversations. Okay, so let's look at personification. Now, what is a personification? Personification may be described as a literary device where human qualities are given to inanimate objects. human qualities are given to non-human agents. So when you describe something that is not human with human abilities, human qualities, human positive or negatives, that will be an example of personification. A very good example would be John Donne's poem, The Sun Rising. In The Sun Rising, John Donne simply addresses the sun as a fool. The very few lines, the very first line of that poem goes by saying, busy old fool, busy old fool. The sun is busy, the sun is old, the sun is also fool. These are things that describe human beings as. Okay, let's look at another one. Fiawona's poem, The Sea is a Land at Hope, is also another good example of where personification is being used extensively. The sea is a metaphor for Western imperialism, and then you have the land as a metaphor for the African continent. Now, Kofi Awono does not come out to tell us, oh, we had Western incursions in Africa and all of that. Rather, he uses metaphor to do that. And then in also using metaphor, he goes a step further. He talks about the fact that the sea eats. The sea does not have teeth to chew or to bite or to inflict such, serious injuries as the case may be. But here, by virtue of the devastation that the sea has caused the land, Kofi Awono describes that encroaching upon the lands and taking away animals and other household utensils as eating. Many times we simply say that the sea is eating the land, the sea has eaten the land, and so on and so forth. So when you describe inanimate object with the attributes of a human being, what you have on ground at that point in time will be described as personification. Okay, let's look at another literary device, this time the hyperbole. Now with the hyperbole, you have exaggeration at its peak. When people exaggerate in literary discourses, the figure of speech or the literary device that is being used at that point in time may be described as the hyperbole. Hyperbole simply means exaggeration. With hyperbole, a fact or a story or a detail is blown out of proportion. When a simple statement tells you something that is larger than life, what you have is the hyperbole. So when you simply say the mangoes are bigger than water, I have not seen a mango as big as a watermelon. Okay, so that would be an example of the hyperbole. I'll give you a very good example in a poem. If you have read this poem, Andromache's poem, To His Poem Mistress, one of my favorite poems, To His Poem Mistress. In that poem, you have an extensive use of the hyperbole. Now, here's a man that seeks to woo a lady, and he goes in a very, very aggressive manner. And he tells, initially it is subtle, and then it comes with aggression later on. He tells the woman, he said, look, woman, I will devote 100 years to praising your face and your eyes. I will devote 200 years each to praising your breasts. I will devote an age to every other body part of yours. Okay? And then I will end it with your heart. Now, how long does a normal human being live for? 80, 90, 100 years at the most. Okay? And here is someone trying to woo a lady and telling the lady, look, I am going to spend 100 years to praise the beauty of men. I will spend 200 years to adore your breasts, each one of your breasts. And then I will go one step further, I will spend an age to every other body part of yours. That obviously is an exaggeration. When a young man approaches a young lady and tells the young lady, hey, look, I will swim the 7 oceans for you. I will climb the 7 mountains to prove my love to you. Please note that is an exercise. Okay. Let's look at the oxymoron. The oxymoron may be described as a literary device where two opposites are placed side by side. When two things that negate each other find a compromise. When two things that are not in direct agreement, when two conflicting ideas, issues, things, adjectives, words are placed side by side, and there is no issue, there is no discord, there is no problem, what you have in that instance will be an example of the oxymoron. So with the oxymoron, it's a literary device whereby two opposing things are placed side by side and they still get to make meaning. Many a time we use this in our daily conversations without even knowing these things. A very good example, we talk about silent scream. Silent scream. We know that whatever is silent will not have that voice to cause a scream. Okay, and a scream is not expected actually to be silent. We also have another example like deafening silence. Silence cannot make you go deaf. It just is not possible. Another example would be to act naturally. Okay, act naturally also is an example of the oxymoron. Another example of the oxymoron would be the organized chaos. Chaos is also something that is not organized. Now, if you look at Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, you would find out that there was a time that Juliet converses with Romeo, and she described their parting as such sweet sorrow. In that stretch of words, you have the use of alliteration, such sweet sorrow. You have the particular same sound at the initial position, and then you also have the fact that sorrow, whatever is sorrow, cannot be sweet, and whatever is sweet cannot produce sorrow. Lastly, on this list, I would like to look at euphemism. Okay, euphemism is a literary device whereby something hard, something harsh, something unpleasant is said in a mild way. So when you are about to deliver something, a very terrible news to someone, and you don't want the whole drama that might result from delivering the message the way it comes, you would have to resort to using the euphemism. So euphemism is a light way of delivering or saying something very harsh, something unpleasant, something very terrible, something very heavy. You get to look at doctors. Doctors need to tell members of a particular family that the patient that they brought in actually died, during the operation. They will simply call them aside and simply say, "Look, tried all our best, but I'm sorry to tell you that he didn't make it, or she didn't make it." So the word "did not make it" would be an example of euphemism. To simply say the person died. When an employer tries to sack an employee, so rather than simply say, "Hey, okay, get out of my office, you are fired," the person might simply say, "I'm sorry, by virtue of the situation around the town, we're not really making so much of a profit, and we have tried to see how we can mitigate our losses, and we just really cannot come up with a better option. So I'm sorry to say that we have to let you go." So that's a more polite, a more gentle, a more mild way of simply shouting down at someone and telling the person, "Hey, you are fired." When someone also has to go to prison, someone has been sentenced to 10, 20 years in prison, and you want to tell some other person that, Jack has been sent to prison, you might simply say, well, he has been sent to a correctional facility. So these examples simply show to us and tell us that something very mild, something very hard, something very heavy can be toned down. So when the effect of these things are toned down and the information is still passed across without being lost in the listener, that would be an example of euphemism. Okay, so let's stop here for now, so that you can have enough time to assimilate and digest all I've said so far. You can read up on some things that I have not said in this video concerning the examples that I've given. Read up about the poems, about the plays, and the likes. Get more examples for yourself, arm yourself, fortify yourself, so that you do not step on landmines in the warfare that you have found yourself. It's a warfare that I believe you are going to win. You are not going to lose an arm, you will not lose a limb, you will not also lose your life. I believe you survive in this warfare. Victory is warfare, but you come out victorious. Please like my video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you don't agree with me based on what I've said so far, please leave your comment in the section below. I'll be there to answer questions and respond to your comments. Thank you so very much. I'll return with a second video for these literary devices, where I'll look at some other things that I've not addressed in this video. Till then, please stay safe, stay out of trouble, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.